We are here today to talk about a critical issue. It's been over 1 year now since the implementation of the USMCA, and Canada is still not adhering to the provisions that they agreed to, specifically as it relates to dairy. Under the USMCA, American dairy producers and processors were to be given increased access in 14 different categories to Canada's dairy tariff rate quotas. These range from milk to cheese to ice cream, and also include powdered dairy products and more. Under the tariff quota system, American dairy products and all other imports are currently placed under one preferential tariff rate until a certain quantity threshold in quota is hit. After that amount is exceeded, the tariff rate increases. However, Canada is currently setting aside a percentage of each TRQ category for Canadian processors and further processors, which actually will be Canadian processors, effectively undermining American dairy producers and their ability to access the expanded markets at the advantageous price points that were guaranteed and negotiated by both parties, or three parties, for the USMCA, the replacement of NAFTA. This is in direct violation of the provisions of the USMCA. Last year, I joined my colleagues in sending a letter to then United States Rep. Lighthouser, calling on him to enforce and fully implement the USMCA. In December, the U.S. and Canadian governments met in consultation to attempt to settle this dispute. This was unsuccessful. Last month, the new trade rep convened a dispute panel as allowed under the USMCA. This is the strongest legal action taken to date. However, this panel can take months to complete. As we emerge from this pandemic, it is essential that we give our dairy farms every economic opportunity to thrive. And this is critically important to Western New York, where a large amount of our economic activity is attributed to dairy farming, especially as my representation in the 27th Congressional District, which is the largest agriculture sector in the 27th Congressional District, dairy farming and processing. One estimate from the U.S. International Trade Commission found that the full enforcement of the USMCA's Canadian provisions could add $220 million in new opportunities for American producers. That's why, as we wait for the dispute panel to do its work, I'm standing up now and once again calling for immediate action on this important issue. Basically, I'm asking Canada to adhere to what they negotiated now without waiting upon a dispute resolution panel. Today, I'm sending a letter to the Canadian Ambassador, Kirsten Hillman, highlighting Canada's violation of the USMCA, the impact on my region, the district I'm honored to represent, and the need for Canada to adhere to the provisions they agreed upon. The USMCA was a historic deal and a great win for farmers, but it will only be that great deal if they are able to utilize every expanded market opportunity.
Dairy farming is such a balancing act and putting a lot of pieces of a puzzle together. We are challenged every day with the weather, how we care for our animals. Labor is a huge challenge, not only here on our farm, but also where our milk is going to the plants and things like that. So we just appreciate the light that's being shed on this issue and any help that the congressman can give us in working to fit those puzzle pieces together that make our farm profitable and sustainable for our generation and future generations. Thank you.
And I just wanted to mention on a local side, I mentioned that the former trade deal, NAFTA, the provisions were not good in terms of opening markets for dairy farmers. There was some provisions that were beneficial, and some provisions, I believe, over the duration of the NAFTA that Canada did not adhere to as well. So they have a kind of history, unfortunately, on this. But there was a brief period of time, I think in 2017, when they did start adhering to it. This would have been under NAFTA. And this region, I believe, in dairy saw about $20 million in economic increase by opening up that market. So now we have the USMCA, which is much better. The provisions, there was a lot of focus and forethought on dairy in terms of Canada that was negotiating the USMCA. And keep in mind the dramatic growth of Southern Ontario, and we are right in the backyard there. So I would believe it's exponentially more than that 20 million figure that we could realize here if those markets were open. So again, this was a fairly negotiated, that Canada negotiated under their own volition with the United States, as Mexico did. They now would need to adhere to this arrangement. You know, if the process has to go through this panel, so be it. It would be great if Canada would just, as we're beginning to open, to send the message they want to be true and true partners and adhere to both the letter of the law and the spirit of law, and we can both benefit on both sides of the border. With that, happy to answer any questions. I think that what they're doing is they're, what do they call it? They created another further processors, I think was one of the terms they've used. So basically the way it was structured, that there would be a certain amount, a certain quota that would not have essentially tariffs. That would be the opportunity for the United States dairy producers to come into the market. Canada has now created this other processors, which inevitably it's going to be Canadians filling that void. So the de facto result is lowering significantly the amount that the United States can sell to. So they are arbitrarily and really against, I believe, the letter of law and certainly the spirit of the law, gaming the system so we cannot get into that market. And the end result is the tariffs are coming at a much lower amount and we're getting blocked out of the market. I'm going to try to, one reason I'm here is I don't think this issue has gotten sufficient attention, that people are understanding that we just negotiated a trade deal and right after the deal, Canada is not adhering to it. That's my read. And I believe that when we get done with this process, that is going to be clearly found out. But again, I think it's important for us to put pressure on Canada to do the right thing. You know, if it has to go through this full year resolution, it will be unfortunate because it's another year of delay as we're just coming out of COVID. But I do think the upside, I think it's going to be the first time we clearly have a ruling on something like this and hold Canada to be true moving forward. I think that, the fact that he negotiated significant dairy benefit, I think shows there was focus, at least on this issue. And, unfortunately, if people want to use to game a system and try to work around and negotiate it. I mean, it was clear in the negotiations the intent was to open up the market and bring down tariffs, de facto bring down tariffs so the United States could enter that market. That was negotiated. I believe if you look at both sides talking about it, they would mention it. So, I think they're trying to use technical approaches to get around it. And I do believe if it unfortunately has to go through this year-long process, I think that will be the end result. I would just rather, ideally, as we're coming out of COVID, we're trying to work getting the borders reopened, that we adhere both to the letter of the law and the spirit of this USMCA, get the trade going both ways, and begin a new day of much more vibrant, robust, binational commerce here, not just in tourism, but in agriculture, which is such the biggest employer in the state of New York, the biggest sector in the 27th Congressional District. So will a letter change it? Probably not, but I think I'm going to do everything I can as an advocate for probably one of the biggest ag congressional districts in the state of New York that is on the back door of Canada, that we need to do everything again to make sure that market is open and they adhere to the negotiated. I would do this in business if somebody did not adhere to a contract that I negotiated. I would highlight that. I'm going to do the same for the farmers of the 27th Congressional.
The exports they directly relate back to how the price is set for our milk and how we get paid for our product. So any opportunities that we can get to have another market for our product increases the price that we're paid and trickles down to the money that we make in our business and are able to put back into our business. Kind of twofold. In general, just the market opening up would increase the demand for our milk. Because we are so close to Canada here, it would probably directly impact the milk that's leaving our farm as well. Right now, I would say we're at a survivable market. No one's getting rich dairy farming at the moment.
One other reason I'm doing this, and I guess I'd say this may be a theme you'll see me pound away on, is, you know, we are here in such close proximity to the Canadian market, and Southern Ontario, their growth projections are so significant. I think I saw something in the next 22 years, there'll be about a 36% increase in the population in Southern Ontario, 6 million additional people, and that's on top of the dramatic growth over the last 10 years. So this is the place where the market is growing, and I believe we need to do everything we can. Obviously today we're talking about agriculture. We need obviously the tourism market. That's why I've been fighting so hard to get Canada reopened, and now we need to get the Biden administration to reopen, to allow Canadians to come down here, because of the fact that is where the growth is, and that's where it is critically important at every angle to the future of our area that we access and enable the Canadian folks to come down here, our market, our products to go up there as easy as possible in terms of infrastructure, in terms of trade deals, and everything under the sun. So we're here today to talk about dairy and agriculture. We're going to be talking about this in a lot of other avenues as well. Any other questions? Well, if a bipartisan deal is negotiated along what I've heard, that, you know, I did not hear that yet today, that it is truly infrastructure, roads, bridges, water systems, broadband. I'm supportive, and if it's paid for, I'm very concerned and troubled that Nancy Pelosi says unless there's a companion bill passed, the $3.5 trillion progressive wish list of everything under the sun, from the Green New Deal to everything else, she's said that she's holding the infrastructure bill hostage. So I'm very concerned and disappointed if she continues to have that, because I think the best way to begin, the best way for us to be more bipartisan is to get wins and do things which we all agree on. And this infrastructure would be a critical win if we could do this. The H2A is another one I'd love to see regarding migrant labor, but that's another discussion. But I'll keep you posted as I go down to DC later today. You know, I check in with the folks at Stamp. You know, they have a great economic development team. I certainly, you know, I read the article over the weekend that there's been some discussions down in Texas again. I hope that they're considering this site as well. I think that we have some great attributes that set us apart from other places, and cheap power is one, abundant water is another, and a great workforce. So I think that Stamp has, and those that have been involved in Stamp for the last almost 2 decades, have really set the table for a great, attractive site. I hope this can be it, and I'll do everything I can. My message is, though, I'm not mucking up economic development by dragging a politician in there. So I've said I stand ready when you see I can be helpful.